Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really grateful that I got to share this video with you. Thank you to PAX Australia and the tech team for putting it up there. I did a Welcome to Country for a Comic-Con event, or for PAX, a couple of years ago, and I was in the convention space, and it was, really amazing to be in there because I love Comic-Cons and I nerd out a bit on gaming as well. But, as I get older, I see different spaces and opportunities. And for me, I wanted to share this video because we filmed that in 2018. So it was 7 years ago. I'm a little bit older since then. But I look at these Wurundjeri women and these jitty dancers, and it just reminds me of all these amazing superheroes, all these incredible heroines, that have these beautiful stories, because the jitty dancers carry our language, an ancient language of this country, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung language, and we sing and dance these creation stories. And a lot of the storytelling that I see in the spaces like this are all based on these heroes' journeys and creation stories and morphing into different beings. So each jitty, we have a spirit protector or a totem that we get given when we're born. So mine is Dan, the rainbow lorikeet, and my daughter is Muk, the powerful owl. One of my cousins on there, as an example, is the Gunawarra, the black swan. And I remember when I got mine, later on as I was older, I thought, how come I'm a rainbow lorikeet and she's a swan, Didn't feel very fair. I thought I was being, given something not as grand or amazing. I wanted an eagle or something really incredible. But the reality is, the Dan, the rainbow lorikeet, I understand it as a very special bird. The rainbow is about my personality, and it's in the star constellations. Dan, the rainbow lorikeet, is actually Bunjil, our creator's right hand. So, the values that go with that spirit protector are actually what it's about. It's not about, how small the bird is. Our dance group is called the Jitty Jitties. Can you say jitty? So the Jitty Jitty is the willy wagtail. And the willy wagtail is a tiny little black bird, and it's known to dance all the time. And there's more stories, spirit stories that we were told as children about not following the jitty out into the forest because it's a trickster. And in some cultures, it's a bad omen. In ours, it is a trickster, but it's also the keeper of dance and our spirit's messenger. So I really love spaces like this because our cultural values and our culture can be shared in these spaces, and, we can resonate with that as people that love storytelling. So, I hope you enjoyed that video, and that was our song and dance of Wominjeka. So Wominjeka translates to come with purpose, so it's not just welcome. And I know in the media there's been some bad press around the Welcome to Country, and I only have one thing to say to AFL or NRL: a tiny little welcome to country or formality is nothing compared to the billions that are spent in that arena. Thank you. And the harm that the media and the people that have a problem with it cause to an elder like Auntie Joy Murphy-Wandon. She's in her late 70s. She's seen so much. Can you imagine how much the world has changed over the last 5 years, 10 years? See, she's seen it through the 30s right up to now. And the harm that causes on our elders, when we should be celebrating like our superheroes. We should be celebrating for the knowledge that they have and the storytelling that they have. So, if we can get allies or any people along the journey with us, that's all I ask through my Welcome to Countries. And the more that we have you on board with us and sharing our incredible stories, or even just listening to them, being a part of them. We had Captain Curry back in the 80s, I think it was, by Uncle Linonis. We had Clever Man that came out a few years back. We've got Waila, the Koori Warrior, but we need more, we need more more superheroes so our young kids and our next generation can see themselves in these superheroes. But yeah, I love this space. I hope you guys have an amazing time. I'm honoured to welcome you all to country on behalf of my ancestors, my elders, my community, but also on behalf of all our spirit protectors and our beautiful native animals that have been on this country, just like the Birrarung, for millennia. So we all care for them as people who love country and just as human beings. So, Balanun Yang Wangat, Naranik Stacy, Waranjeri Willamik, Waranjeri Balakut, Ba Jajawarang, Ba Nulairam Warang, Ba Irish, Ba Dandan, Mundanai Murup Gulada Birrarung, Mundanai Liwik Bulok Nugulik, Mundanai Willambik, Mundanai Tharangauk Bik, Wuruburu Bik, Mermut Bik, Banya Bik, Bik Dui, Ba Bik Good, Ba Mundanai Baguruks, Ba Gulanya, Ba Transgender, Gender Diverse, Non-Binary, Ba Mundanai Kirapik, Nungodjan. So I just acknowledged, in short, the layers of country, our beautiful star country, sky country, the air we breathe, and the wind country. It's invisible, but it's so powerful. The water country, the on country where we're standing. I'm on a stage, but it's still the big ut, it's the on country. And then the below country, which is underneath the ground, which we can't see. There's a lot going on under there. So I acknowledge those layers of country. I acknowledge all of you, all of us in this room, all your ancestors, all my ancestors, all your spirit protectors. I acknowledge all First Nations and mob who, Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander who may be in the room, and any elders. I acknowledge all of us come from First Nations, from somewhere, so I honour you and the journey that's brought you into this room today. And finally, I acknowledge Bubups and Burais, that's our next generation, our young people, our children and our babies. But most importantly, Kirapik, which is friend. So if you can remember one main thing today, Kirapik is friends. So Nungodjan, thank you, and Womenjika Wurundjeri Balak Yamankundi Bik, welcome to Wurundjeri country. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for coming to PAX Australia. Let's kick it off with a bit of story time. This is the art for the magic card wish. It truly feels like a wish to be here. You know, I've been on stage at PAX Prime out in Seattle, right down the street from my house. I've been on stage at PAX East. I did that earlier this year for Final Fantasy. I've been on the stage at PAX Unplugged. But this is my first time here at PAX Australia, and I'm here on the stage. I'm just that good to get the picture in there right now. Thank you very much. There's a chair here. I won't be needing it. I'll be standing. Let's get excited. A lot to talk about today. Let me talk about my career path, first of all. So I got hired by Wizards in 2011. It's kind of an interesting career path. I got hired by Wizards in 2011 to design Magic the Gathering, and that's it. I've been there ever since. That's the end of that story, and I just keep making more and more Magic cards. Maybe interested in some of my other history, though. Surely this man hasn't just only touched Magic cards his entire life. You're right. Here's me as a child getting acquainted with the fine Hasbro product right here. A little bit of Play-Doh action. And then in 2001, at 11, I started playing Magic the Gathering. Actually, when I was 10, I started playing Magic. When I was 11, I decided I want to work designing Magic cards. When I was 16, I went pro at Magic. I used my pro Magic play to help pay for college. And then I graduated and got hired by Wizards in 2011. So really, I've been doing Magic a long time. I love this. And when I was 5 years old, my mom asked me what I wanted to be for Halloween, my first ever Halloween I got to choose. I told her I wanted to be a bear snake. I wanted to make up my own fantasy creature. This is what it looked like. It's a great costume. This is me as a bear snake. And I'm happy to report that 30 years later, I'm still making bear snakes. So it's very up my alley. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do today, and I was like, let's talk about the years I've worked at Wizards and some stories and lessons from all of them. So this panel is called 15 Years, 15 Lessons. Because you all are nerds, and you probably were paying attention, you might notice I've only been at Wizards for 14 years. But technically, there's 15 different calendar years I worked at Wizards for, so let's not be pedantic, okay? 15 years, 15 lessons is going to be great. Besides, 15 sounds cooler than 14. So I've been at Wizards 15 years. Let's talk about 15 lessons I've learned that are not just about game design, but hopefully a little about life, too. Lesson number 1. Okay, so there's a format in Magic the Gathering called Commander. It's very popular. A lot of people love this format. Yeah, okay, I'd love to hear that from the audience. How many of you out there are Magic players, by the way? Raise your hand if you play Magic. Raise your hand if you don't play Magic. You're very brave, thank you. But this is a presentation good for all folks, but if you know Magic, perhaps you'll get a little bit of a leg up. So we make these pre-constructed decks that are really popular for Commander. People go out and buy them all the time and pick them up and start playing Commander with them. You can, of course, bring your own decks, but we make all these pre-constructed decks. Commander and traditional Magic are quite different from each other. Here's some big differences. Regular Magic is one-on-one. You can only play usually a certain number of cards, say the past few years of Magic. 60-card decks, 4 copies of every card. The games are, of course, they can vary, but they're relatively short. Commander, on the other hand, 4-player multiplayer. You can use any card in the history of Magic. You have 100-card decks, and no two are the same. They're long games. You get to get political with your friends. Here's what an average Commander game looks like. There's a lot going on. If you walk up to this table, there is a lot happening there. Now, experienced players, this format's great. Here's an Australian smiley face. People love Commander. Experienced players coming in, they're like, great, this is great. I know all the cards. I know what's going on. This is wonderful. For new players coming in at Wizards, we're like, this is a disaster. Whatever they do, they must avoid Commander. It is 4 players. It is every card in the history of Magic. Do not enter. Do not come here. If they enter and start playing Commander, they're going to go careening off a cliff and not understand what is going on whatsoever. So we're like, we have to make sure that they stay away from this and start with something else before they start playing Magic fully. So we tried just telling people not to. That, of course, didn't work at all. We made up some other products. Here's a product we did called Brawl Decks, which is supposed to be kind of like a Commander, and one of the goals was to be a bit easier landing place for people as opposed to Commander. That didn't really work. We tried these Planeswalker decks that were like, oh, here's a Precon you can play instead of playing Commander. None of that worked. Everyone just wanted to keep playing Commander anyway when they're new players. And what we realized is kind of here's the reason why. If you are a new player and you go to your friend's house, and you're like, oh man, you keep talking about this Magic game. Magic is awesome. I want to come try it. What they're not going to tell you is, hey, great, go get some starter decks, and in like 6 months, come back to my house and you can play with us, right? That's just not what anyone's going to do. They're going to say, yeah, just go buy a Precon, show up, and we can all play Magic together, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Commander has a lot of other things that are great for coming into Magic. It's very casual. The stakes could not be lower. You get to help everyone out if you want to. It's 4-player multiplayer, so if I need to tell you, hey, here's how you could cast a Magic spell, I can just do that. Nothing on the line. People are used to things taking a while. Commander games are slow. So it actually kind of turned out to be a pretty good learning environment. And we decided, okay, well, if everyone's going to come in through Commander anyway, or a lot of people are going to come in through Commander, let's lean into it. And so now we do things like have starter Commander pre-constructed decks. So if you're coming in through Commander, you have a deck you can buy that is a little more easily approachable that you can sit down and play. So the first lesson I have here, I told my coworker Mike Turian this story, and he looked at me, and he was just like, Gavin, water runs downhill. It always stuck with me. It's just way easier to follow the path that everyone is taking and try and make that a better landing point for them than to try and go in the face of that, right? So instead of trying to fight the path of Commander being what everyone's starting to play as they start Magic, let's make stuff that's good for it, introductory products. I think about this in life all the time. I'll sometimes want to go counter-current to what's happening, and it's a lot easier to figure out how to make what I want to do with the way that things are moving. All right, lesson number 2. I was working on a set called Gate Crash. This was the first ever, yeah, there you go. This was the first ever set I got to be on the team for, right when I started Wizards back in 2011. And there's a card that I loved, Ghost Council of Orzhova. This is in the original Ravnica set in Guild Pact. I played this card a lot when I was a player. And we were going to make a new Ghost Council. And they were like, Gavin, come up with ideas, turn them in the next day. So I opened up my trusty Word document, like I always do as a designer, and just start typing ideas in there. And I was typing ideas. And I wrote one down, and I was like, that card's really cool. But that card's way too strong. And I just deleted it. I was like, there's no way. Then I went and I walked around the house a little bit and did something else and came back. And I was like, you know what? That card idea was really cool. I'm just going to send it in anyway and see what happens, right? And I go to work the next day, I send it in, and the lead designer's like, I love this. This card's great. Let's do it. And it got printed almost exactly as Obsidian Ghost Council. I deleted it, and then it came back from the dead, which is appropriate for the card, I guess. But it was so cool watching that card come out. Players love it. And then even seeing it be played in the finals of Pro Tour, where Tom Martell ended up taking down the Pro Tour with Obsidian Ghost Council, which would have never happened if I had just, deleted the card, not sent it in. So lesson number 2 here is don't disqualify yourself. I think this happens a lot. We'll like look at a job application and be like, nah, I couldn't do that. That's not for me. Don't disqualify yourself early. Don't delete your work before you send it in. You might have a shot. And this Ghost Council made it all the way through. And I'm really glad I did not delete it because I love that card now, and I really enjoy playing with it. All right, lesson number 3. I was working on Commander 2017. There we go, that's what I like to see. This one's a banger. Commander 2017, we decided we're going to base around the creature types of Magic. So every Magic card has a creature type. This is one of my favorites, a Lizard Wizard. This has nothing to do with what's in the deck at all. I just like Lizard Wizard. So we went over to a whiteboard and we started writing down all the ideas we could think of for what could be a creature type for Commander 2017. And we came up with a long list of ideas. Here's actually, I saved the list. Here's all the ideas that we came up with as potential options we thought were above the bar. We were trying to figure out which ones to do. And some fell into place right away. We're like, dragons, boom, knock it down, no problem. Vampires, people like vampires. We were about to do white-black vampires in Ixalan, so that made a lot of sense. Wizards, okay, there's a lot of wizards in Magic. There was some wizard support already. But the 4th deck we were having trouble with. It needed to be something green. We couldn't quite figure out what it was supposed to be. And my coworker, Mark Gottlieb, is like, we should do cats. And I was like, Mark, there are like barely any cats in Magic. We can't do a cats deck. That's not going to work at all. The thing about Mark is he has 2 very cute cats. And he was insistent. He's like, no, let's try to make this cat deck work. And I was like, you know what, Mark's been here for a long time. Let's give it a try. So he builds up the cat deck, and he comes back to me, and he's like, all right, I got it. It's going to be cats and equipment, because cats like knocking things off of shelves. And also because equipment are sweet, and some of the cats that exist work with equipment. I think one of the only Cat Matters cards at the time was Raksha Golden Cub. And I was like, Mark, I just do not think this deck is going to work. I really don't think this cat deck is going to work out. But he's like, let me just build it up and play in the next playtest, and we'll see how it is. And I was like, okay, I trust Mark. So we start playing the playtest with this cat deck, and a few turns in, he plays a brand new cat that he designed. And a few turns later, he plays another brand new cat that he designed. I'm like, oh, these cats are pretty cool. And then he played another brand new cat. And then before you know it, he's cast like a lot of brand new cats. And I'm like, oh, that's what I wasn't seeing. I was looking at only what was there right now, but if you make a bunch of new cats, which obviously we're going to do because precons get new cats, or new cards, but in this case, new cats, it was going to be just fine. One story I love, so we greenlit the deck, of course, we came up with the cats deck. One story I love is here's Mark's cats. He came in one day and he's like, Magic has a lot of vicious cats, but they don't have a house cat. We should make a cat like a real cat you would have in your house. And I'm like, Mark, that's ridiculous. And then he pitched me this cute card, and I was like, can't say no to this. Cats who control protection from rats? Come on, that's just a perfect line of magic text. Even looks like his cat. So anyway, lesson number 3 here is you need to imagine what could exist, not just what currently exists. I think a lot of times in game design, but also in life, we're like, here's the world as it stands right now. These are the rules we have to play in. But of course, the cat deck would work if we made 8 new cats. We got a bunch of new cards. Let's do it. And I'm so glad we made the cat deck because the cats are sweet and everyone loves cats. So, except for those dog people, I guess. Okay, anyway, lesson number 4. Lesson number 4. So we're pretty good at Wizards about using our crystal balls, looking into the future a little bit, trying to figure out how a card is going to do. We've gotten pretty good at it over the years, but we are not perfect and we're always learning. And sometimes we make mistakes. Here's an example of a classic mistake, Jace the Mind Sculptor. What happened with Jace the Mind Sculptor is we wanted blue to be strong in standard, so on a scale of power level, let's say 1 to 10, we targeted this card as at a 10. And turns out that you miss sometimes, and you end up above a 10, which is bad. You do not want to be above a 10. Jace was maybe like a 12 or 13 on power level if you were to use some weird heuristic that I'm using in my head right now. And it ended up way too strong. And the problem is it's very hard for us to react to this kind of stuff because if something goes wrong, it takes us a long time to fix it because Magic, we work on really far ahead cycles. A classic example is right here with Affinity. This was a deck that came out and was extremely powerful. It was like the main deck you would play in Standard. It was destroying everybody. We didn't realize that back at the time. And when I say we, I was 14, so not me. It was long before I came to Wizards. And they're like, okay, we'll put a hate card in the next set that we can put a hate card into, which is a year and a half later with Kataki War's Wage, which is a great Affinity hate card, but a year and a half late was not going to fix the problem, so they had to ban a bunch of cards from the Affinity deck. So now when we go and we do a set, like say we needed Scars of Mirrodin, the Return to Mirrodin, we often put hate cards in the same set or same block. So here's Creeping Corrosion, for example, which we put in to help fight off any potential artifact strategies, a little bit of a countermeasure there. we even do this recently. Here's some cards from some recent sets. We've got a card from Ether Drift, a card from Edge of Eternity's there. And in the same set, we made sweepers that could destroy all vehicles or destroy all spacecraft, respectively. And kind of the thing here that my former coworker Eric Lauer told me that always stuck with me is that, and it's kind of freeing. It sounds bad, but it's kind of freeing once you realize this. You're always going to be wrong. So many times, you're going to make a plan, and it's just not going to work out the way you want. And sometimes it's going to work out the way that you want, but it's still going to be not exactly like you envisioned. And so if you assume that you're always going to be a little bit off, then you can try and make the error bars hit. If Jace the Mind Sculptor had been targeted at an 8 instead of a 10, and we missed a little bit too high, well, then it's a 10 out of 10 instead of a 12 out of 10. So you kind of want to assume you're going to be wrong, and then how can you make sure to mitigate for that in case something goes awry? That's a nice little lesson number 4. Let's move on to lesson number 5. Okay, I was working on, I think there'll be some woos for this one. Well, I wasn't working on it. I enjoyed it as a player. This set, Innistrad, original Innistrad. Great set. This is right when I was coming to Wizards. Innistrad was the brand new set on the table. And if you don't know Innistrad, it's a Victorian horror setting. It's got vampires. It's got tropes from movies. It's got references to the number 13, all spooky things, all delightfully spooky things. And I came into Wizards, and I saw all of this, and there's this card I always loved called Hidetsugu's Second Right. I love this card. It says, target player with 10 life loses the game. And I was like, we should do this for 13. It's so funny. If they have 13 life, they lose the game. I called the card Unlucky Day, which I thought was a great name. And I started pitching it around, and people were like, oh yeah, this slaps. This is like really cool. I like this design. Let's not do it. And I was like, what do you mean let's not do it? You all say this is great. And they're like, well, here's the deal. It's a great idea. Let's save it for the next time we go to Innistrad, because we could put this in a random set and it would be fine, but in Innistrad it would be great. And of course at the time, I'm just starting, I'm 21 years old. I'm like, man, that sucks. It's going to take forever. But time passes, and a few years later, before I know it, I'm working on Shadows over Innistrad, the sequel to the Innistrad set. And I pitch Unlucky Day, and it makes it in as Triskaidekaphobia, which is one of my favorite cards I've designed. This card is really cool. If you don't know Triskaidekaphobia, it is the fear of the number 13, which is a great name for this card. The art has 13 copies of 13 scary things, so we really got to hammer home the 13 thing. And I'm really glad that in retrospect, we saved it for the right time, because if we had done this earlier in a random set, it would not be nearly as cool as this card. And we save stuff all the time. How many of you have played with the new set, Edge of Eternities? Great. It's a great set. In my first week at Wizards, we were talking about doing a space set like Edge of Eternities. That was 14 years ago. Now, obviously, it wasn't fleshed out. We did that far from what it would look like now. But this idea has been in the hopper for a really, really long time. And we waited till we thought it was the right time to do it, and we could execute on it. So lesson number 5 here is be patient. Wait for the right time. It's better to do a card in the set that it would be the best fit for than put it in some random set right now. So there'll always be time. Let's wait for the right time. All right, let's move right along to lesson number 6. This one is a little bit about nostalgia. So I put the card Nostalgic Dreams up. I love using cards as interstitials. This presentation has nothing to do with nostalgic dreams. I just thought nostalgia would be fun to show off. So we do this nostalgic stuff all the time in Magic. Here's Akroma, which is a throwback to a previous Akroma that we made that was very popular. We did a Morphling that was very popular back in Urza Saga, and then we made a bunch more. I made this one Brightling, but we made one for every color over the course of time. Sometimes we do mechanical throwbacks. Here's a card that I made that just tickles me. This is a dog with Unleash. I'll let that sink in for a second. You get to let all your dogs off the leash, which I think is just wonderful. And it's a fun mechanical throwback. And sometimes we do even throwbacks with specific cards. Here's Garth One Eye, who cares about, he literally generates copies of cards like Black Lotus, Brain Geyser, Shivan Dragon. We do throwbacks all the time. And it works out well. Sometimes. We use nostalgia decently well, but we've got some lessons to learn, and we have over time. We did a set at one point that a lot of people love called Zendikar. Zendikar is awesome. It's this great world, this amazing adventurous world, and it's about, there's these adventurers going through these treacherous landscapes. You have creatures like a Mirror Angel who has landfall, who, you're all about playing lands. You have quests that you go on, which are fantastic. You've got adventurers. You've got your trusty allies here, like Orenri Survivalist and Seagate Loremaster. These guys help each other out. The allies boost each other. And of course, these heroes can fall into some traps sometimes. It was a really cool adventuring world that was a lot of fun. Our players really enjoyed. We had 2 sets of this, and then in the third set, we did this set called Rise of the Eldrazi, that was still on the same world. It had Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, iconic card right there. All is Dust was totally awesome. But, there's still just some dudes kicking it. Here's a Seagate Oracle. He's like, oh, well, yeah, Emrakul's over there, but, I got to go get some treasure, And they were still just kicking it on the world. But the Eldrazi showed up, and it was a big deal. So we did all 3 of these sets, Zendikar, Worldwake, Rise of the Eldrazi. And they went over pretty well. Players really, really loved these. And so when we decided to go back to Zendikar, we did it. And we're like, what are we going to do? Well, let's pick up exactly where we left off, right? Let's start exactly where we stopped, which was with the Rise of the Eldrazi, where the Eldrazi showed up and we're fighting against the Zendikar natives. We made a set called Battle for Zendikar. I worked on this one, and it featured, as the name would imply, citizens of Zendikar fighting against the Eldrazi. And you had some things you recognized, for sure, You had Landfall was back. There was a new ally mechanic. That was pretty cool. But a huge chunk of the set was taken up by these weirdos. Cards like Culling Drone and Ruin Processor. These guys had Devoid. They had no color. It was a weird mechanic. They had Ingest, where they stole cards off the top of people's library. The processors could then eat the cards you exiled from people's libraries. That was something new, that was for sure. We also did this mechanic called Converge that cared about the number of colors you spent to cast it, which was kind of weird and not very Zendikar-y. And then in the second of these 2 sets, Oath of the Gatewatch, we came out with colorless mana, which was a weird, brand new thing people had never seen before. And so for all the people coming in who were like, I loved Zendikar, and they experienced these 2 sets, they got some Zendikar, but they got a lot of weird Eldrazi monsters and colorless mana and stuff that is not what they expected. And the sets did totally fine, but I'd say the player reaction was very mixed. A lot of people loved the Zendikar tropes and Return to Zendikar, but all the Eldrazi was just a lot. People wanted to go back to the adventuring world of Zendikar to see all the people that were there, to see the great adventures that they could go on. So when we did Zendikar Rising many years later, we did exactly that, right? We came back to just this huge sense of adventure. The Eldrazi were basically nowhere to be seen. We had cards like Scale the Heights, which just has this great art piece of someone climbing the side of a Zendikar horizon, I suppose. And we returned mechanics and used them in traditional ways like Landfall. You also get this cute little guy who I just love, the Fearless Fledgling. He looks so adorable. And we've learned a lot from the Zendikar experience. When our original Champions of Kamigawa came out in 2004, this block came out, and there were some cool things from it. There was Ninja of the Deep Hours. People loved ninjas. That was awesome. There were Samurai. Bushido was less cool, but Samurai were cool. There were weird spirits. Soul Shift, maybe not as cool of a mechanic, but there were weird spirits. There was this mechanic called Splice onto Arcane that a lot of people did not understand, and these were all kind of there. And so many years later, when we went back with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which came out a couple years ago, yeah, all-time banger of a set right here, I think. We were like, what are we going to bring back, right? What are we going to bring back from original Kamigawa? And we're like, we got to bring back ninjas. Everyone loved ninjutsu. That was a really fun mechanic. We loved that. We'll bring back samurai, but we don't have to use the Bushido mechanic. We're going to leave that at home. It's not what people remember. And let's get the cool spirit dragons back. Those are awesome. But we don't need Soul Shift or a bunch of stuff like that. Let's do some individually cool spirits. And we got to build out a world very different using the same material that people loved. And it felt like Kamigawa to people, despite us only kind of taking the most beloved elements of Kamigawa. Early next year, we're going back to a very exciting world. We're going back to Lorwyn, which I am very, very, very excited about. I've wanted to go back for a long time. I played it as a player. I've been talking with people about Lorwyn for like a year now. It's over and over and over again. I talk to people about Lorwyn, and I'll ask them, hey, what are you excited about? And they'll be like, oh, I'm so excited to go back to Lorwyn. I'm like, oh man, you're excited to go back. How long have you been playing Magic for? This set came out like 14, 15 years ago. They're like, oh yeah, I've been playing for 2 years. And people are so excited to go back despite never having played it the first time, which is so fascinating to me. And what I realized is there's all these cards from Lorwyn that are iconic, right? Muldrifter, Cryptic Command, Bitter Blossom. These are all awesome, iconic cards. Lorwyn has a lot more than this. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in Lorwyn, a lot of stuff that people forget about Lorwyn and Shadowmoor Block. But there's a lot of iconic cards that came out of it, and over time, people have really adopted those as the mantra of Lorwyn. And so when we were going back and working on Lorwyn this time, we were like, let's do some cards that are reminiscent of these, because that's what players really love. So we showed these off at MagicCon Atlanta a few weeks ago, but We did more evoke cards because, of course, we liked Muldrift the first time. We did a new cycle of commands that harkens back to Cryptic Command. We did Bitter Bloom Bearer, which is a riff on Bitter Blossom. So let's grab the stuff that people knew and make that the nostalgic element we were hooking into, not just the stuff that people didn't remember from Lorwyn and Shadowmoor Block. So the sixth lesson here is that nostalgia is about what people actually remember. When you're trying to build something nostalgic, look at what they actually remember from it, not just what the literal thing is. I always think about how the Kraken was not actually part of a Greek tradition, but yet Krakens show up because of in popular media, therefore we put a Kraken in our Greek-inspired magic set. So sometimes it's about what people actually remember being a part of something as opposed to what it actually is. Okay, lesson number 7. You're all a bunch of gamers. And you are very smart. I also, a game designer, I like to think I'm very smart too. Our whole team, we're like, we are so clever. We're going to choose the clever thing and do the clever thing a lot of the time because we are just so smart. And I remember I was working on the Brothers' War, and I was tasked with doing 2 commander decks for the Brothers' War. Now, if you don't know the Brothers' War, it's the story of Urza versus Mishra, right? They are these 2 brothers fighting one another. It's one of the most iconic stories in all of Magic, these 2 fighting each other. It goes back all the way to the very beginning of Magic the Gathering. You see this name over and over and over again, right? With Urza's Blueprints, Urza's Power Plant, Mishra's Workshop, Mishra's Factory, Mishra's Helix. I mean, they're cool because Urza had both glasses and sunglasses. And it doesn't get any cooler than that. Like, these were artifacts we decided to make, But there was a problem with this. I didn't want to use both Urza and Mishra. Me and Daniel Holt, who were working on this, were like, let's not do just Urza and Mishra for the 2 commander decks, for a number of reasons. There were some very good reasons. Number 1 is they're really mechanically similar. They both love artifacts. They're going to both be very artifacty decks. Let's do something different. They're going to be the same colors. They're both probably blue and black and something else. Because of that, the color balance is going to be poor. These guys are not green at all, so with only 2 decks to pull from, there'll be no green deck. And then from a creative standpoint, their profiles look the same. They look very similar from afar. They look like very much the same character. And me being clever, I'm like, we will explore something different. We will not just do Urza and Mishra. Let's try some other stuff. So we looked at Tanos. He's Urza's trusty assistant. We looked at Titania, who's awesome. She's a cool green character that commands the forest. She's super cool. We looked at Gix, who manages the Phyrexians. We're like, all these are awesome. And I kept showing them to people, and guys, this is going to be sick. It's going to be like Urza versus Gix. You all are going to love it. And everyone's like, this is really good. But did you think about the 2 brothers? That might actually be a really good choice for this. And I was like, no, but not the 2 brothers. Anyway, so I did this enough times, and eventually I just realized that it was right to do the 2 brothers. It was the most iconic thing that was going on. It made sense to do both of them. So, of course, we did an Urza and a Mishra deck, and we found ways to differentiate them a little bit. One cares about creature artifacts, one cares about non-creature artifacts. But ultimately, it was just the right thing to do. Everyone thought that the Brothers' War should be about the 2 brothers, so we did those as the 2 decks. And that brings me to lesson number 7. There's nothing wrong with a simple answer. Sometimes we spend a lot of time being clever and smart and trying to find an answer that is much more complicated, but sometimes the simple answer is just the correct one, and you shouldn't feel ashamed or like you aren't clever for choosing it, right? If you burn your opponent out and you're playing mono red, that's still a game win. So that's right, all you red players out there. Okay, lesson number 8. Lesson number 8. I like a metaphor for this one. I love metaphors. I'm a writer. I study creative writing, so here's a metaphor I like. Imagine you're going on a hike. I'm so sorry. Imagine you're going on a hike, and you go on this long trail. You're going to meet your friends at the top, and you have your trusty backpack. Here's your spare supplies, and you fill your backpack with all the stuff you need. You fill it with some food, because of course you got to have trail snacks. You put your trusty machete in there in case you encounter something on the way. You never know. You put this arcane spyglass in there in case you need a telescope. By the way, this card sucks. I would not bring this card on a hike with you, but that's fine. You can put it in your pocket anyway. And you go on this hike to meet your friend, but it turns out, man, this hike is a lot harder than you thought. It's really perilous. And you get attacked by some monsters. They steal some of your stuff. The spyglass is gone. You get lost for a little while. You got to eat some food. You break your machete. It's like this whole situation. But after all this, you do survive, you make it to the top, you get to see your friends, you're so happy to be there, and you talk to all your friends, and they're like, oh man, so glad to see you, where's all your stuff? And you're like, oh, it was a whole thing. They're like, what do you mean your stuff's not here? Like, where's your stuff? Where'd your stuff go? All they see is that you were losing your stuff. They didn't see all the stuff, all the journey you went on to get there. So despite the fact that you feel like you went through this huge travail, all they see is the end result. When I was working on Commander 2018, I wanted to make a new land. I wanted to make a land that would help decks catch up with all of green's ramp, because green ramps way too much. So I was like, let's make a new land, and this land is going to be sick. Here's what I wrote down. It taps for colorless mana, and you can pay 1 and tap to scry 1 and flip over your top card. If it's a land card, you just get it into play. Actually, only if an opponent has more lands than you. If this card existed in Magic, how many of you out there would put this card in your decks? Would you play this card? Yeah, a good amount of you raising your hand, a land that ramps. And I thought so too. So I was like, this card's going to be sweet. It's going to help really solve this problem. We start play testing, and people are like, it's a little cheap to activate. Let's make it cost 2. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's reasonable. And then they're like, yeah, it's actually, if they just have 1 more land, it's like if you go second, it's really easy to do. So it should be like if they have 2 more lands than you do. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. And then the one that really killed it is someone's like, yeah, it's too easy with like non-basic lands, dude. You got to make it basic lands only. And at this point, I would not put this card in my decks, and I don't think you would either, because we actually did print this card, Isolated Watchtower. And none of you have probably seen it in your lives. So this card, not very strong. What happened here? Why did I end up making this card? How did this all come to fruition? Sometimes when you're so in the weeds on something, you just lose the forest for the trees. And one thing I do a lot now is after a card goes through a lot of changes, I just take a step back, and I'm like, is this card still worth making at all? Is it still a card worth making? And in the case of the Watchtower, I should have been like, this card is just not worth making. Let's scrap it and do something entirely different with this. So lesson number 8 is all people will see at the end is the end result. You do all this stuff, you do all this work, they'll never see all the conversations you had, all the intent you had, all the discussions. With a Magic card, they just see the card in the booster pack or in the commander deck. And a lot of things in life you're going to spend a lot of time creating, show them to somebody, and they will only see the final product. All you guys are seeing is this presentation with my 15 facts. You're not going to see the numbers 16 through 20 that I didn't put in here, So all people will see is the end result. And always take a step back to make sure that the end result you're giving is something you're happy about and hasn't changed too much on the course of its journey. Okay, lesson number 9. Here's one I think that's relatable for everybody. How many of you like coffee? Okay, I don't drink coffee at all, but I'm glad you guys like coffee. There's a story I like by this game designer named Jesse Schell. He gave this talk in a GDC presentation that I love. There was a company that had this really old coffee pot. It was like this horrible, clunky old coffee pot. The whole company showed up and waited around this pot every morning to get their coffee from it, and they all complained about how much this coffee pot sucked. And they just stood there and waited for the coffee to get ready. This is a water jug, but pretend it's a coffee machine. And they just waited for the coffee to get ready, and it was horrible. And they kept complaining over and over and over to the company, please fix this coffee pot. And eventually, they capitulated. They're like, fine, here's this fancy new coffee pot. It has a light-up dial and numbers and lets you spill coffee beans on your counter, I guess. Anyway, it was cool. And so people were like so happy. They're like, great, this coffee pot, finally. But something weird started happening. Suddenly, employees just didn't know as much as they used to. People were like being left out of the loop on things. They didn't realize what was happening. They were getting confused. And what they came to realize is that time every morning as they were standing around the coffee pot complaining about the coffee was 5 or 10 minutes where they could just chat about the projects they were working on, what they were doing, what they cared about. And it turns out that coffee time was actually like really important to things working for this company. So the company tried to figure out what to do, and naturally they replaced the new coffee pot with the old coffee pot. No, not really. That would be a funny way for the story to end, though, but they didn't do that at all. But it did get me thinking a lot. I like this story a lot, because we all have these routines that we go on. We're the same thing we do over and over again, but it's really important to build in time to build that connection where we get a chance to talk to each other and share information in a work setting or in a personal setting. So like, for example, at work, I run a lot of meetings, and every now and then I'll be like, today what we're doing? We're just talking. The next hour, we're just going to sit in here, talk about whatever's on our mind, and a lot of times stuff comes up that no one knew was happening, and I'm like, oh, great, I'm glad I got to learn about that. When I'm making commander decks, or any product really, I like to bring in at least one person who isn't a designer to be on the team so they can share what they're working on, and we get extra opinions in the room. So Scott Larrabee helped to design this Commander 2018 deck. It was one of the first times I ever did this, and now on almost every design team, I try and bring in someone in who is not a core designer. Another critical way, something we all love doing, I'm sure, eating food. I did something at work for a little while called Rando Lunch, where every week I would pick 5 random people in the company, invite them all to lunch, and we'd all go out together and just talk about what we were working on. Now, every week on Tuesdays, we get lunch brought into the office, so it's kind of like a good environment to do that. But just being able to hang out around food and just talk about what you're working on, really valuable. So lesson number 9 for me is you want to be the coffee pot, right? You want to be the thing that inspires people to talk to each other and shares information and can help connect the dots. And I found that is really helpful for me at work, but also outside of it, right? You never know what's going on in a bunch of your friends' lives, and sometimes it's good to be able to share that information between each other. Okay, lesson number 10. I was working on Commander Legends, Battle Baldur's Gate. Great set, love how this turned out. And we were trying to figure out what mechanics to put in here. And we were going to do Dungeons & Dragons, Baldur's Gate, awesome. And we're trying to figure out what mechanic to do, and we're like, you know what's a great fit for D&D? Party, D&D, party. It just makes sense, right? Party cares about rogues and wizards and clerics and warriors, all on the same card. Let's do it here. No brainer, right? Well, a bit of a brainer, as it turns out, because this set had a lot of infrastructure it needed to support. It was a multiplayer draft format, so it needed multiplayer matters cards, like this cut a deal. And if you focus on those 4 creature types, it becomes harder to show off all the other D&D classes, of which it has many, right? So D&D, of course, has many more classics and clerics and rogues and warriors and wizards. It's got bards and rangers and other things that you want to show off. So people kept asking for us to put it in the set, and we're like, it doesn't make sense. We just can't do it. Meanwhile, I started working on the commander decks, and I was like trying to figure out what my 4 deck themes were going to be, and it was a really hard task. What were the 4 deck themes for commander going to be? And I was like, wait a second. What if we connected these 2 things? What if we took the commander problem I was having, which needed to figure out what decks I was going to make, and the party problem that the main set was doing, and we did a party commander deck. It didn't show up in the main set at all, but we could do it here. And so I brought this deck to life, Party Time, one of my favorite precons that I've ever worked on. Many people's favorites. Many people said this is one of their favorite precons of all time. And I was glad I got to bring those 2 threads together into one place. I'm a writer, so there's like a writing metaphor I like to use. Please, this is your little writing lesson for the class. Here's a random sitcom I made up. I just made it up when I was making this presentation. Sitcoms often have 2 plots, an A plot and a B plot, right? You get your 2 characters off on different adventures, or your 4 characters split up on different adventures. So here's a random sitcom I literally made up as I was doing this. The A plot, 2 characters go to a wedding. The B plot, 2 characters are stuck working at a grocery store. What has to happen in the climax of this episode? They got to meet up somehow. So you can make up whatever one you want. Ideally, people at the wedding need emergency groceries is what I came up with. So there's like, there's a catering emergency. Grocery store workers, come out here and help us out. That's one way you could end that story. There's a writer, Trey Parker, who's an animator, does a number of shows. He has this whole presentation on and then versus but and therefore that I really, really like. Here's a list of things that I did. I went to the grocery store, then I went to a wedding, and then I flew to Australia for PAX, right? This is just a list. It's pretty boring. It's very informative, but it's pretty boring. But as a writer, if you change some of those things to but or therefore, you get a really good story. I went to the grocery store, therefore I went to a wedding, therefore I flew to Australia for PAX. This inspires a lot of questions. Was the grocery store having a wedding in it? Did you meet somebody there that then told you to go to PAX? What happened there? And immediately you're asking questions. You're connecting the dots. You're making one thing lead to another. Or if you want to, be even more wild, you can throw in a little but and therefore action. I went to the grocery store, but then I went to a wedding. What? Then I flew to Australia for PAX after that. So I went to a wedding, and therefore, because I went to the wedding, I flew to Australia. Was I invited? All that kind of stuff. It's just a little writing tip about connecting the plots. And I think it's really important to connect the plots. And in Magic, I try and do this a lot. If I have 2 different problems I'm trying to solve, trying to connect the A plot and the B plot together. Hey, you should do Party and Baldur's Gate. B, I'm working on Commander decks. Let's bring those 2 together and connect those plots into one place. That's lesson number 10. Lesson number 11, I was working on Return to Ravnica. This was, I didn't get to be on the set team for this, but it was the actual first set I touched when I got to Wizards. And when the pre-release happened, I went to my local game store, and I was all like, tell me what your favorite card is. People told me all kinds of favorite cards. And I'll never forget, there was this one guy, I went up to him, and I was like, what is your favorite card? And he's like, oh, my favorite card from this set is, of course, Cobble Brute. I love this card. And I was like, the 4-mana 5/2 with no abilities. And he's like, yes, Cobble Brute is awesome. I love Cobble Brute. And there's so many cards that people can get attached to, you know? And they can be for all kinds of different reasons. Here's a card I helped make, Hans Eriksson in Commander Legends. He's just a fun guy, you know? He's just out there going around, smelling the roses, and he's got a really fun mechanic on him. Some people love our cards because of the callbacks. I made this card Sardian Avenger. They love a good Easter egg. Many of you probably didn't know that this guy is a callback to Gaia's Avenger in the exact same pose many years later. Some people learn about that stuff and fall in love with the card. Here's a common people really love from Battlebond, which I worked on, Saltwater Stalwart, because you could make anybody draw a card, and it was fun to be a little political. Or sometimes you just make a card that is too strong, and people love it, and you got to live with it forever. I'm so sorry, or you're welcome, either way. So let me tell you the tale of maybe the oddest card I ever made in my entire life. It's this. This is the oddest card I've ever made. It's this dude. Whenever it attacks, reveal the top card of your library, you can cast it without paying its mana cost if its mana value is odd. I wrote this down, and I'm like, this has some real potential to be a card that people love. I want people to fall in love with this card. I'm going to put extra time and energy into it. And I went over to the creative team, and we worked really closely together on this one to create Yannette, Cryptic Sovereign. What is going on with this card? Now, it still has that line of text about revealing your top card and casting it if its mana value is odd. But let's talk about Yannette for a little bit. It costs 5 mana, which is an odd number, of course. It's a 3/5, which is both odd numbers. It's got Flying, Vigilance, and Menace, which is, of course, an odd number of keywords. Zoom in and enhance computer. It's got 3 pillars in the background. It's got 1 pot. It's got 3 horns. It's got 3 eyes. Everything about this card in the art is very odd. Zoom out, computer. Let's go back. Let's take a look at this. It's got 3 words in its name, each of which has an odd number of letters. It has 9 words in its flavor text, each of which has an odd number of letters. The collector number of this card is 51, an odd number. It is odd all the way down, and I worked really hard with our creative team to make that happen. And as a result, when this card came out, so many people over the years have come up and been like, Gavin, this is one of my favorite cards, and I love the work that was put into it. And I always think back to Cobble Brute guy, because he loved this common. It was very simple. You don't see a lot of 4-mana 5/2s. That was his reasoning. He's like, I just thought it was cool to see a 4-mana 5/2. You never get to see that. So when I'm making even commons in a set, I try and put the same amount of love and care into them that I put into all the other cards, because any card could be someone's favorite card, right? Every card in a set is someone's favorite card, so try and make each of them resonate with someone somehow. Even if it's a common, they might be a big drafter and love it for limited. You never know what card is going to be someone's favorite card. Let's move on to lesson number 12 here. Okay, so I do a lot in the realm of social media and being a face for Magic. I guess I'm here on stage at PAX Australia, so that makes sense. I have a YouTube channel called Good Morning Magic. You all can go like and subscribe right now. Thank you very much already. This is a great video I love. It's one of my most watched videos, 5 cards I regret making, where I tell you about 5 cards I regret making. If that's not tantalizing enough, I don't know what is. I go to a lot of our conventions and speak. Here's a picture I love in particular because it's like I'm preaching about white mana. Have you heard the good word about Savannah lions? Anyway. But I'm also just on my phone all the time. This is a picture a friend snapped of me once, and I was like, yeah, that's me. I'm on the beach on social media. But as a result of being a face of Magic, I get a lot of feedback. I get tons and tons of feedback. Now, some of that feedback is very high quality. You know, sometimes the feedback is a PSA 8. But sometimes the feedback is, let's say, a little more pointed. People are not perhaps as happy about something going on in Magic. And I think it's very tempting when someone gives you feedback, especially feedback you don't want to hear, to either argue, you either refute it, or you ignore it. Right? Those are the very 2 common reactions. No, you're wrong. I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to listen to you. It's very tempting to do that. It took me a long time to learn, and just chatting with people and just my experience in my own life, is when someone has feelings about something, when someone is feeling something, someone's feelings aren't wrong, right? If someone is feeling angry or upset around something, like you can't be like, no, you're wrong. You should not feel that way. That's not the case. Now, I might not agree with a lot of people have different feelings. I might be like, we still have to do it this way. I'm sorry, but I hear you, right? I hear and understand, and I try and do a lot of listening. I try to do a lot of listening with people, where like, hey, tell me what you're thinking. Let me internalize that, and maybe we'll find a way to improve that down the road. Maybe enough people tell me this feedback, we can improve it. So I love listening to people. I love listening to Magic players and their feedback. I'm the guy that reads all the comments. And it really helps me to reframe it like this, which I think is something that has been really critical for me on my journey. When people are frustrated with magic, what they're really saying, and I know this sounds bananas, what they're really saying a lot of the time is, I love magic so much, but this piece of it is not making it the game I want magic to be. Can you please make it better? But it all starts from this basis of loving magic. They would not be talking to me on the internet about their least favorite thing if they didn't love magic so much that they wanted magic to be better. We all start with this common bond, this thing that connects us of like, we love magic, I love magic, you love magic. Okay, there's something you're frustrated with about magic, but we both love magic, and we start there. And once you understand that and you hear their feedback, you can do a bit of deep analysis on what they're saying, right? And think about it and reflect on it. So for me, people ask me all the time, how do I deal with negative feedback? So I get plenty of it. I hear it all the time, everything we do, that someone doesn't like. For everything we do, someone loves it and someone dislikes it, right? And it's really this. Even negative feedback, usually, not always, but usually comes from a good place, right? There has this common bond that unites you guys. So I think about this a lot as I'm trying to deal with negative criticism and feedback. Okay, lesson number 13 here. Okay, let's try a little experiment. I want everyone to think about a memory in gaming that really excited them, they were really happy about. Something you did in a game, it could be at any point in your life, it could be 10 years ago, it could be 5 years ago, that you were like, man, that was awesome. I feel that. Raise your hand if you have a memory in your head right now that is like something amazing that you did in a game. A lot of people raise their hands right away. You thought about it, boom, you have it. Okay. What about the opposite? Something that made you feel so frustrated, like your team member messed you up in a game, or you were fighting a boss and you died. Raise your hand if you have a memory that's really strong about that. Something that you're like, yeah, okay, most of you also raise your hands, great. This stuff sticks with you. Raise your hand if you know what you ate for lunch 1 week ago. All right, some of you have better memories than I thought. Great job. But definitely fewer hands than everything else. And that's because, and I'm no scientist, but there's a lot of great stuff you can look up on the internet about this. Memory and emotion are really closely tied together, right? When you have really emotional highs or emotional lows, it really keys into your memory. Sometimes it ends up repressing those things, but the majority of the time, it ends up making sure you remember those things for a long time. That's why when I do things like throw any kind of party, for example, I always try to have at least one thing that is like, you are really going to remember this. It's a really cool moment, a really cool food item, or a little mini game we all get to play. If this guy jumped through the window, that would be memorable for sure, but something that makes it like really memorable. And to me, this is exemplified in Magic with one card in particular, one card that is very controversial, and it's this card right here, Temple of the False God. And if you know, you know on this one. So Temple of the False God is, I'm just going to say it, a great Magic card. It's very powerful. It's a land that taps for 2 mana. That is twice as much as a normal land. It even has Pro Tour pedigree, right? Here is Gabriel Nassif's Temple of the False God from the Pro Tour, one of the best players to ever play Magic. All you need for Temple of the False God to work is 5 lands. And it's one of them. So really 4 other lands. And the math works out, right? If you look at the math on your deck, Temple of the False God is usually good to include. As long as you're playing enough lands, which is another issue. Play more lands in your decks, please. But anyway, when we're making precons, we just kept putting in Temple of the False God, right? Over and over and over again because it works. It's great. It's wonderful. And every single time, I would get so many people being like, this card sucks. I drew Temple of the False God and 3 lands. I could not cast my spells, and I lost the game. And the thing is, you don't remember the games where you just play it on turn 5 and you have 5 lands in play. No one remembers those. You're like, oh, cool, I just got to cast my spells. But the games where you couldn't cast your spells, the Temple of the False God wronged you, you feel personally affronted by. This goes the other way, too. When I really like to make cards that have these huge emotional highs as well. One of my favorite cards I've ever designed, one that many of you in this room have probably cast at some point, is this one, Teferi's Protection. This is a sweet card where you cast it and you basically go away for a turn, right? So your opponent's about to kill you or use some effect that absolutely devastates you, and you're like, nope, I'm out of here. You snap out, and it creates this amazing moment, this amazing story. And a lot of folks can remember their Teferi's Protection turns. This kind of all goes hand in hand with this thing that Mark Rosewater always talks about, which is if you're asking people to rate something, you would much rather have a bunch of people rating it 10s and a bunch of people rating it 1s and a bunch of people rating it 6s and a bunch of people rating it 7s, because the 6s and 7s are okay, but it won't really stick with you. It doesn't really get people excited to go and engage with it. But if you have 10s and 1s, there's going to be people who are so excited to go check this thing out. So lesson number 13 is people most remember the highs and the lows in something. So try and really emphasize the highs that you're trying to create, because they will really, really remember those things. And with Temple of the False God, I've now started taking out a lot of the precons because people just get so frustrated about it. It really sticks with you. More Teferi's protections, please. Okay, lesson number 14, or maybe not. Maybe you guys have enough of that card. I don't know. Lesson number 14. Yeah, this is a tricky one. So I was working on a set called, that I really loved, I'm very attuned to, I really care a lot about, called Battlebond. This is one of my all-time favorite things I got to work on. Now, Battlebond was a very unique set of Magic the Gathering. It had some very unique goals that I was trying to do. It was the first ever two-headed giant set. These are just some of the goals, but it was the very first two-headed giant set. It had a multiplayer focus. It wanted to have cool cards for Commander and Eternal formats like Legacy and Vintage, and it should have at least some exciting reprints. And it took us years to make the set, and I came up with a lot of different solutions for these problems. I came up with these lands that enter untapped if you have two or more opponents. Great, that's just something exciting for Commander. Yeah, you all love these. I came up with this partner with mechanic, where you could play one of them and your teammate could find the other, but also in Commander, they could both be your Commander, which was very cool. I came up with some sweet new cards for Eternal formats and Commander, like Spellseeker, and I put in a great reprint here in Doubling Season, which was pretty hard to get a hold of, at least at the time. Great set. I love this set. I'm super happy with all these solutions. I am satisfied. Imagine an alternate universe, a parallel universe, if you will. Someone else is leading Battlebond. Maybe it's Mark Rosewater. Maybe it's someone else. I don't know. They're leading Battlebond. And they come up with their solutions to this. They're like, for their lands, yeah, I have a pretty cool idea. What if we did these Surveil lands instead? And people love the Surveil lands. They would have loved having those many years earlier. Okay, well, I come up with the solution of coming up with two different creatures across two cards. What if you did it on the same card, like we did in March of the Machine, right? What if you did Galta and Mavrin, two creatures, legendary creatures in the same place? That's how you team people up here. What if instead of a Spellseeker, it's a riff on a Imperial Recruiter, we did a riff on swords, and we did a sword in this set? That would have been awesome. And what if instead of Doubling Season, we did Imperial Seal, right? That would be our big reprint in this set. This is also a totally valid and totally cool-looking Magic set. It's got awesome lands, it's got these cool legends, it's got great reprints, it's got great new cards, and Battlebond and other version of Battlebond would have both been pretty cool sets. Yeah, maybe one might have done a little better than the other, or maybe some players would have liked one over the other, but overall they both would have been really, really, really great. I like to, once again, think that I'm pretty smart and I know what I'm doing. But the reality of the time is, we're all very analytical people. We probably spend a lot of time thinking about our decisions and trying to make the right decision. But for a lot of things, there is no right answer, right? You can do it two different ways and both end up with something that's really wonderful. This can apply to jobs. People are always thinking about, should I change my job or not? Maybe you'll be happy in both worlds. Maybe you won't be happy in both worlds. But it's very hard to say that one is right over the other. When your living places, same deal. Should I move? Should I not move? Well, maybe you're happy in both places, and you'll never know about the other way around. Maybe in a relationship, you're like, should I move on? Should I stay here? I don't know. You could be happy in both worlds. It's hard to know about these other things. My friend Alyssa calls these ghost ships. They're just like sailing alongside of you, and you can see what the other reality would have looked like a little bit. You can peer over the edge just a little bit and think about this other world. But you never really know, and both of them you're probably decently happy in. And that brings me to lesson number 14, which is there often is no one right answer. We spend a lot of time trying to do the thing that we think is the best or the most correct, but in a Magic set, two people could lead the same set. You might end up with two very different sets, and they might both be totally awesome. And in life, often you have a decision you have to make between two things, and it turns out you'll be good either way, so do the one that you feel most excited about. Finally, lesson number 15. Lesson number 15 here. I have traveled all around the world. I've been to all kinds of places. I've been to Japan to play Magic. I've been to Italy, most recently for this Paupergeddon event. Shout out, I've got a Pauper Bash happening tomorrow, so go check it out in the tabletop area. Go play some Pauper with me. It's going to be a fun time. I've been to the Philippines. One of my favorites is I went to Machu Picchu and, of course, took the Magic card, the city's blessing that inspired it with me. That was pretty fun. I've even been here to Australia. I was here at the Fortress for some events they were throwing all the way back with the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And looking around and seeing how happy people are, how excited they are to be there, how lovely they are and how much they love Magic is so inspiring. Magic has changed so many lives, right? I know people that have gotten married through Magic and met their partner through Magic. I know people that they move to a new place and Magic is what let them meet people and interact and make their friend groups. I have lifelong friends, and many of you probably have lifelong friends through Magic. It's inspired me to do so many things, even on the product level. When I made Mystery Booster, I was like, this is going to be at conventions. It's a convention product. Let's put in something really weird that gets people talking. And I came up with these playtest cards, which are hand-drawn. These ones are hand-drawn by employees, have these weird mechanics on them, but they really inspire you to look around the room and be like, dude, you have to take a look at this. This is wild. We spend a lot of time talking about Magic. We call it Magic. We're in the hall. This is a Magic tournament. We're going to buy a Magic pack. This is what we call it. But the other half is just as important, the gathering. The gathering is really, really, really important, and I would argue a lot of the times more important than the Magic itself. It's all about coming together and playing games as a unit. It's all about the gathering. So thank you all for being a part of the gathering here at PAX Australia. This has been 15 years, 15 lessons. Go out and enjoy your gatherings. Thank you very much. And see ya out there on the floor.